Hi everybody, welcome to the Manifold channel. Today we're going to continue our series on tutorial videos learning how to use Manifold, and everything that we're going to do in these videos also applies to Manifold Viewer as well. So we're going to pick up where we left off at the last video, where we were looking at a maze in Venice, which is near the Church of San Gregorio. And what we're going to do with this video is we're going to learn how to export data and how to print a map. So we've got a lot to cover. Let's get right to it. We don't need to work with this particular map. We have two maps open here. There's one there and then one here. Notice how we're clicking on the tab, the upper tab, to choose which component is open. We can also, if we like, shift click to undock a component. And we're not going to work with this one, so let's just close that. And we'll work with this map right here, which is a map with multiple layers. It has a bunch of landmarks layers, some labels. It has an OSM canals layer that we created. We can turn a layer on and off by double-clicking its tab, or we can do that here in the Layers pane by turning it, by clicking on and off that little button right there. And it's got this layer right here, which is coming in from a project that we linked in called ESRI Venice, and that's another Manifold project. As you know, you can nest Manifold projects a couple layers deep and bring data in from them as if they were local, and it's just as fast as working with that local. Let's get rid of that layer. We're not going to work with it, so we're going to delete from map. And we have this layer right here. Well, what I do here, I deleted the canals. Let's bring the canals back in. My OSM canals, and there it is. The canals are back. Let's delete this layer right here. That's the 1 meter ESRI layer. And here's the ground surface layer, which is going to turn off structures, which is a pretty big layer right there. We don't need to work with that either, so let's turn that guy off. Let's delete that from the map as well. And Bing Street Maps is the background layer. So let's learn how to add some data quickly to the map. And what we're going to do is we're going to add a few points, and we're going to add some points here to the landmarks. To add a point, we one last thing I want to do. Let's add a Google Street Maps layer, because I want a satellite layer. So let's because I want to refer to turn that layer off. I want to refer to what's going on here by referring to the Google satellite layer. And what I want to do is I want to add some landmarks to the Wiki Landmarks layer. And it's called Wiki Landmarks because the descriptions came from Wikipedia. And let's say, okay, what's important to know about Venice? Well, top of the list, of course, is a good pizza joint. And right here, I'm going to turn off OSM structures. Here in the Campo San Polo, which is one of the little squares in Venice, is one of the best pizza places you'll ever meet in your life, and it's this one. It's right here, which we're going to move to the center, and that's the so-called Birraria La Corte, and that's this is an old brewery with a wonderful restaurant that serves some of the best pizza you ever have in your life, as well as all sorts of other Italian dishes. So, with the focus on the Wiki Landmarks layer here in the cursor control, I'm going to choose Create Point. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to click where I want to add a point. So let's click to add a point right there. Just created the point, and the point right now is provisional. It hasn't actually been created. We can we can edit it by adding things to the record pane here that pops open. And what I'm going to do is off screen, I'm going to highlight from Google Maps in the browser the name of this restaurant, and then I'm going to paste it right there, the Birraria La Corte. And what this is going to be I'm going to highlight the definition, copy it, and right here I'm going to paste that into comments, and let's edit that. Right click on that and edit, and let's see about Birraria La Corte. What is this? Birraria. Birraria, I believe, means brew pub. My Italian isn't all that good. If it was French I could tell you exactly, but Italian, no way. Huge range of pizza plus all sorts of classic and modern main courses in a rustic former brewery with beer on tap and pizza seats and piazza seats. Great, that looks good. Click OK. So we've just added that, and if I like what I've done here, this is shown in blue and Persian color. I just click Add Record, and there we just added a point to that record. Because the landmarks labels automatically take their value from the name field, and I can click on this point again. They automatically take the value from the name field. The label automatically will appear. And I'll click anywhere else to turn that off. What else can we mark in Venice? Perhaps of secondary importance compared to a good pizza place is right here, and that's one of the best train stations on earth. I just love this train station in Venice. And let's put a point right here. Click Create Point, and right here I'll put the point. Put the point right there. Call it Train Station. And I'll right-click on the comments and go straight into the Edit dialog. Wonderful. Train Station. Visit Venice by train, not by car, since you'll be leaving your car in the parking lot. Anyway. Great train connections. Florence. And many other cool cities in Italy. Fine, that'll do. Okay, and if I like what I see, I'll click Add Record. And right away there's a point there, and there's train station appears. So let's zoom out here a bit. And we can see what that looks like. I'll control click on the structures layer to zoom to fit the structures layer so we can see how all this is in context. Okay, that's great. So let's now export some of this stuff. And what can we export? Well, maybe let's export the structures layer. And the easiest way to export a particular layer is to right click on it right here and choose Export. And that'll pop up in the Export dialog. And let's export it, not export it to G package, because to export to G package depends on whether or not you've installed the SQLite drivers. I have in this particular machine. Perhaps you haven't, so let's not do that. Let's export it to shapefiles. Shapefiles are boring, but hey, everybody uses them anyway. And we will call this my OSM structures. Click Export, and it's done. That automatically creates a shapefile. So if we drag and drop a Windows File Explorer session to view, you can see here it is, my OSM structures. This map meta file is something that Manifold creates. It's kind of a belt and suspenders thing. Map meta provides all sorts of information about coordinate systems and such, which might be lacking in PRJ files and all the rest. All that does is that it assures that if you thereafter import the shapefile into Manifold, all that stuff is there with high precision at the tip of your fingers. So let's export something else in a different way. Let's export the entire map. And we can do that too. With the focus on the map here, I've just clicked on that map tab. I can choose File, Export, and when the focus is on the entire map, it's going to show us the file formats that are capable of handling an entire map. That is, file formats that are capable of handling multiple structures. Gpackage is one of them. GDB is another. Manifold has ESRI geodatabase drivers built in. Those are actually the ESRI geodatabase drivers. They're not Manifold code. So let's choose that. Let's call this Venice map. And save as type GDB, click Export. It's going to take a second. GDB is a pretty slow format, but Manifold's reasonably quick at working it. After all, it's using ESRI's own drivers. So if we take a look at what that created, we can see it created this folder right here called venicemap.gdb. If you know geodatabase, you know that it has this Rube Goldberg structure of a folder with a zillion small files in it. And the actual one that you want to click on is called this right there, GDB, when you want to import it. But as you can see, Manifold created all that and did it for us perfectly. So there's no issues and no problems working with that. Great. If we want, we can launch another Manifold project and see what happens, what that GDB looks like. And let's click that open right here. And here's another Manifold session. I can choose File, Import, or I could link to it. Well, let's link to it. Why not? File. Now let's import it. File, Import. And what I want to do is I want to import the GDB. So I'll click on that, click Import. And Manifold imports that using the ESRI drivers. What Manifold does is it automatically creates the map. And it doesn't export the Bing Street Maps layer because that's not something that ESRI understands in terms of GDB. but it imports everything else, and you can see it conveniently packages all this in the various subfolders, wiki landmarks and so forth, so you can see what it does. And the nice thing about GDB is that Manifold can write style information to a GDB. If we want to add the Bing layer, that's easy to do. Create a Bing street map layer and drag and drop that into the map. Right, drag and drop it into the map, and let's put that below the OSIM canals. And you can see that's bringing the data from Bing. Super. Let's get rid of that. File close. Save changes now. Move that out of the way. And what can we do next? We've learned how to export individual layers to in a variety of formats like shape, GPackage, all that sort of thing. We could also export the images to image formats. We learned how to export a map to a GDB. Let's learn how to export the entire project, because something we might want to do is to save this project in the Manifold MXB format. If we take a look at the, go up here to Venice, if we take a look at the file formats, I'm going to drag this File Explorer back into view. You can see that these Venice map structures are pretty big. If you have a bunch of images in them, they could be like 500 megabytes. If you have the one big image that we have in this one, which is a big raster, which is the train elevation raster for Venice, high resolution, that adds up to about 300 megabytes. And what we'd like to do sometimes, we like to save Manifold projects in a format that's more compressed. And that's what MXB format is. So let's call this compressed, or let's call it archival. All right, and save as file type MXB, click export, and Manifold will actually compress the data. And what MXB format is, it's a compressed form of data with a very robust data structure. It doesn't include anything which Manifold will not actually compute on the fly. So if we take a look at this, what it created, we'll go back in here to this guy right here, and let's see what I got to do. I got to refresh that, I think. Here's my MXB. You can see the MXB is only 94 megabytes, and that's a lot smaller than the 300 megabytes that I started with. Now, when we open that, if we take a new Manifold session here and click File, Open, and we click Open the MXB, the first thing Manifold will do is it'll decompress the data, and it'll rebuild all the various data structures. You can see it's not terribly slow doing that. It takes a couple seconds. It's not 1/10 of a second like opening a dot map. So if we're working with an MXB, which is say 100 gigabytes and not just 94 megabytes, it may take it like 10, 12 seconds or something like that to decompress. But it's not bad, and the savings in space is fine for archival storage. Most Manifold people don't use MXB except when they need to send something through the internet. Instead, what they'll do is they'll just save everything in .map format, and let's face it, a 6 terabyte hard disk these days is very inexpensive, so it's not like it's going to break the bank to save slightly larger file sizes in order to go way faster. All right, let's close that and let's move that out of the way. So we've learned how to export. We've learned how to export project to MXB. Let's now learn how to send stuff out to Postgres. And to do that, I'm going to create a data source here for Postgres. I'm going to turn off the Google Maps and put Bing back on here. All right, let's go to File, Create New Data Source. A new data source is something that we can do when we want to create a more sophisticated type of connection, which we say, for example, connect a database. And we're going to call this new data source PostgreSQL. And the type of the very long line of types of things that Manifold understands, it's going to be a PostgreSQL database. And the source for that, I'm going to have to maintain security. I'm going to have to fuzz out some of the stuff in the actual what video. And I'm going to copy and paste. Copy. Here's my IP address for the server. I'm going to use a login, and the login is going to be username or something like that, and the password is going to be and the database is going to be GISDB. And let me click the test button to see if that works. Yes, connection's established. That's all cool. So now what I can do is I can click the OK button, and I can create a data source. Click Create Data Source, and there it is. So there's my PostgreSQL data source. And you can see that data source as I popped it open. That's all the stuff that's in the database. And if I want to export stuff from this map, for example, my OSM structures, OSM structures drawing, I can just highlight those and click copy. And then here in Postgres, I can just click paste. And what it'll do is it'll actually send all that stuff out to the Postgres database. Now, what Manifold does when it does is it uses the batch loader. It uses a specialized batch upload to Postgres, which is faster, and it's actually matching everything that's going on here. So it's matching the spatial data reference to the SRIDs and stuff that are used in Postgres. And you can see here's my public OSM structures. If I double-click that open, you can see there it is in full latitude and longitude glory. And this is actually coming from the Postgres database. Manifold is so fast at this that it's actually faster to, if you want to load Postgres with shapefiles, with data from a shapefile, to first import the shapefile into Manifold and then copy and paste the shapefile from Manifold into the Postgres database than it is to use the Postgres bulk loading direct from shapefile to a Postgres database bulk loader. So we've learned how to export data to a variety of different things. We've learned how to create a database connection, and we can use the stuff that's in the database. We can just copy and paste into that database, and we can copy from the database and paste into Manifold. If we like, we can drag and drop things from the database. Turn off OSM structures here, and let's drag and drop this into the map. And you can see this layer is now coming in from Postgres. Postgres is a fine database that you can use, as are the various other ones, MySQL, Oracle, all the others. I tend to use either Postgres or MySQL because they're unlimited in capacity and they're free, which I like. You can use them as centralized archives for data which are shared by many other people. And that's one convenient thing about using the database, is that you can take a drawing of those and you can link it in, albeit perhaps read-only, for use in many Manifold sessions by many people at the same time. I'm going to delete this from the map, turn the OSM structures back on, and let's see. I don't actually need the Postgres thing anymore. I'm going to delete that data source. I haven't actually deleted the database. I've just deleted the reference to it in this map file. And now let's learn how to publish a map, how to print it, to share it with other people. And we're going to work with this map right here. And what I will do is the way you print stuff in Manifold is that you first create a layout, and then you drag and drop whatever you want to the layout. So let's create a layout, and file create. Actually, it's let's do it right here. File, create, new layout, and we'll call it layout. And I want format A4, and I want to use a portrait. Let's use a landscape, and let's create a layout. And when I pop up in the layout, this is what I see. I don't like these big fat margins, so I can choose File, Page Setup, and let's make the margins all 10 centimeters, 10 millimeters. As you can see, we're in Europe, so we're using a metric system here. If you're in the United States, you can use inches, and you can use paper size, not A4, but letter or whatever else you want to use. Click OK, and you can see the margins change. This button right here shows or hides margins and outlines for the various frames. So to put something into the layout, we just drag and drop whatever we want, drag and drop map into the layout. And it starts off looking like that. And let's zoom in. I'll double click on this and double click to activate it. And now I can use all the same zoom tools. For example, right click and zoom, just like I would in a regular drawing. And let's wait for it. There you go. And we can manipulate this as long as we're in this sort of double-click mode where we've selected this, chosen this frame for editing. Elements that you add, by the way, are called frames. Let's actually resize this frame a bit. I'm going to click outside of it, and I will alt-click and pick it. Layouts use what are called pick and select workflow. Pick is what you alt-click, and control-click is to select it. I'm going to make this frame a little bit smaller size. Let's make it about this size. And I'm doing that kind of artificially. That's just to give me some room here on the left to work with various things that I want to add. And I can alt-click anywhere, just click anywhere else to unpick that. Double-click into that to turn this into a live panning and zoom kind of session right there. And let's zoom out just a little bit. Actually, let let me zoom in right about there. And whatever's shown in the map is going to appear here in the layout. Click outside of it. So let's say I go here into the map, and let's say I don't want canals to be visible. If I turn them off in the map, then when I come in here to the layout, I can choose view. Actually, I can do anything in here, like just click in and click out. And the moment I refresh that view, it'll automatically refresh by pulling stuff from the current state of the map. Notice now the canals are now gone. So it's showing those canals. Was showing those canals before. Now it's no longer showing the canals. And click anywhere else outside of that. If I like, I can add elements. For example, let's create a text frame. And create a text frame. I'll just put it right here. And I can edit the text here in the record pane. Let's call this Venice. And click Update Record. And now I can mess around with the various settings here. And let's change the put that back into the default cursor. Let's resize this text frame. And I can change various elements to this. For example, I can give it a border. And let's make the border 2 pixels wide. And so now we have the name of this with a different border. And I can give it let's change the color of this. Let's make the text blue. And let's make the background black. Click Update Record. And now if I like, maybe I can make the text white. Click Update Record. And we can go for all the different effects that people will use. Actually, let's show some of those effects. Let's make the background white, and let's make the text black. And for effects, let's go for a shadow, drop shadow. Click Update Record. And let's see what I want to use for a shadow. Let's make that. Let's make the shadow black. Now I'll tell you what. Let's keep doing the shadow. Let's not get tricky, and let's just leave it as is. And let's go back to the original idea of making that white, and let's make the background gray. See how that does? Now let's make the background black. Okay, and let's make the border. I don't know. Let's make it red. That's not the prettiest look, but it is dramatic. All right, and let's create a legend. So for that, we can do File, create a legend, and it'll automatically create a legend for whatever we want it to create. And let's create a legend for let's create it for OSM structures. And the legend is let's call this a legend building heights, because that, after all, is what's shown in the OSM structures coloring. There we go. Now, when we're working with legends, it's most productive if you keep the layers pane undocked, because what we're going to do now is we're going to show you how to work with. I'm going to show you how to work with what's called pick and select workflow. The legends pane makes it extremely easy for us to select something by selecting all the folders. All the stuff in legend is organized in a folder. So if I control click that, I've just picked the entire folder. And what I can do is I can alt click any one of the frames and to pick it. And now whenever I move the picked frame, everything that's selected automatically moves with it. If I selected any of these other frames, those would have moved with this as well. I can control click, the header on the legend to pick any of these things to turn it on and off. Let's turn all that off. And now if I want to get rid of various things, for example, I want to get rid of here this particular heights deal, I can delete that. And if I want to delete this OSM structures box right there, I can delete that. And let's see what else we can do. Let's turn off the base layer, which is here in the background. And now what I can do is I can control drag to select all those, alt click to pick that, and now I can choose various commands here. It's like in the alignment pane, and it'll use the picked cell to align everything else. So for example, I choose stack vertical, that'll automatically stack all those layers pane, all those legend subframes back into that main legend. So I can then over here choose Shift Control A to unclick all. That's just a shortcut to unselect everything, and that gives me a legend like that. We can tinker endlessly with these things. For example, I can pick a particular frame, and then here in the record dialog, I can change all the various characteristics of that. So for example, I can change the padding. Well, let's change the padding. Why not? Let's change the padding to 2. Click Update Record, and you can see that it adds a little bit of padding around the size, so that does make the sample smaller. We can deal with that, but I won't bother, and we'll just do this. And if I like, I can select everything, and now all the other frames there. And now what I can do is I can make all these the same format. So let's do that. And deselect all those. And so I've just changed the legend. If I like, I can zoom into the legend here like this by just moving that around, and you can see how I've done that to the legend. I've actually changed the legend to make those the samples a little bit smaller to add a little bit of padding. Like I say, you can do all sorts of endless tinker time when you're working with layouts and legends. It's really convenient to keep the layers pane open so that you can select different elements in the pane. There, we just selected the map, and let's zoom to fit this guy. Here we've selected the Venice text frame, and so you can just select all these different things and move them around to your heart's content, and arrange them as you see fit. Okay, let's print this now, and what we're going to do is here in the layers pane, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to turn on this background frame, and as you can see, the background frame is a little bit larger. The background frame is the one which surrounds everything, all the other frames, and that was something we created that's called the base frame. That just provides a nice border for all those sorts of things, because otherwise, if we were to turn off the margins, you can see what this looked like. Let's say if we had that, oops, let's turn Venice on. If we'd had the background frame turned off and we had the margins turned off, you can see the legend would look like this without any surrounding border. We would like a surrounding border, and so to do that, I'm going to turn the background frame on, and what I need to do is I need to resize the background frame to all the rest of it. And so to do that, I'll pick this, and I'll also click that. So these are all selected now, and what I can do now is choose the background frame. I'll right click on that and make that the active frame, and now when I choose this, I can resize to selected, and what that'll do is that will resize the frame that I've picked to be the same size as all the selected ones. There, that's a very convenient way, once you've been messing about changing the the sizes of all these other different frames, to have that outermost frame, to have that the one that surrounds all that stuff nicely and conveniently made the same size. So now when I turn off all the margins, you can see the legend is going to look something like that. If I wanted to, I could turn on borders on the inside and do that sort of thing, but I'm not. I'm just going to leave the legend as you see it right there. And now what we can do is we can print this using the Microsoft Print to PDF. I'm not actually going to print it to a printer. I'm going to print it to PDFs. So I'm going to choose File, Print, and we're going to choose Microsoft Print to PDF. And the print that I'm going to do is I'm going to call this, let's call it Venice PDF. And that looks good. Now click Save. Microsoft Print to PDF. It's very convenient having a print to PDF because it's built into Microsoft Windows 10, so you can create PDF files. There, it's done. And let's see how well that worked or how poorly it worked. And what I'll do is I got to drag and drop the File Explorer back into view. And here's the Venice PDF. That's what it created. I will double click on that to take a look at what it looks like in Adobe Acrobat Reader, and I'll scroll that into view. And you can see this is what it looks like. If we zoom out, there's the document. If we zoom in, you can see that it actually did quite a reasonable job. PDF is not the fastest format in the world to work with lots of vector data. So if you have really big vector layers, it's going to take print to PDF a long time to print these, and a long time to create that PDF. But as you can see, that did actually quite a reasonable job here for to create all that with full resolution. It did a really sharp job with the legend. That looks great. And this is zoomed out to 300%. If we look at it 100% zoom, this is a real life size. Exactly how it would be printed if you actually were to print this out on a A4 sheet of paper, which is roughly comparable to a US letter size paper. It's actually slightly taller and narrower and proportional. But that came out quite well. So anyway, we've had a lot of fun here doing adding points to a layer. Let's go back here to the map. We added points to the Wiki Landmarks layer. We saw how the labels automatically popped into existence when we created a point here for the pizzeria, and we created a point here for the train station. We showed how we could export to shapefile. We could also have exported them to a G package if we have loaded the SQLite drivers on our system, and which many open source fanatics already have. So that tends to be kind of an automatic deal if you're into G package. And we've shown how to export the entire map to GDB. We've shown how to export the entire project to MXB for archival format. Then we showed how to create a data source, a connection to a Postgres database server. And that database server, by the way, is offsite. It isn't even here local. It's I'm not exactly sure where that server is, but it's somewhere way out there, in connecting through internet somehow. And we copied and pasted the OSM structures layer into that server. And then what we did is we created this layout, and we showed how we can drag and drop stuff into the layout, and basically how that select and pick workflow, where you select things and then you pick something as a kind of a guide, and then you can drag that guide around, and that drags all the selected stuff around with it. So we can deselect all that, and I'll click anywhere to unpick that. And then we showed how you could actually print a PDF, print a layout by printing it to PDF, or if you have a real-life printer, hard copy printer, you could print that out as well. I hope if you enjoyed this video. I want to emphasize that everything that you've seen here is covered in way more detail through hundreds of step-by-step, lavishly illustrated examples in the user manual. So don't miss the opportunity of utilizing the user manual. If you want to see any detail on anything that's covered here, which we can't cover everything. This is a video after all. Go into that user manual, drill into it, and you'll discover all those wonderful things. Learn all about Manifold in whatever detail you want. And like I say, take advantage of all those hundreds of examples, which do provide those step-by-step details how to do everything. Thanks for watching, and goodbye from Manifold Land. Well, that was fun. If you want to see more, visit us at www.manifold.net. As always, Manifold delivers the world's most advanced, highest quality spatial products for GIS and DBMS at a low price that you can afford. Once again, that's manifold.net. See you soon.